Millions of kids going back to school in Ontario and Alberta and elsewhere. There's also the so-called triple threat looming in the fall. For some parents, a little concerned. Triple threat of COVID, RSV, even the flu. Let's bring in Dr. Christopher Labos. He's an epidemiologist, cardiologist, joining us from Montreal. Okay, so let's start off with those, and I want to get to the heat too, because I know it's a big issue in Montreal where you are. But let's talk about those triple threats here and what you think parents and kids need to know as they go back to school, Dr. Labos.
Well, I think what they need to know is we are seeing more infections. Numbers are going up for COVID, but for all of the other circulating respiratory viruses. So we need to be mindful of the fact that as we get into the fall, when you have a bunch of kids together in one classroom breathing the same air with each other, we're going to see more kids getting sick. I think most of us hope that it's not going to be as bad as it was last fall when we had a real surge of cases to the point where the pediatric hospitals were being overwhelmed. But I think we need to prepare ourselves for the fact that cases are going to go up. We just don't know how high and how long it's going to last and how bad it's going to be. That's the real big question and the real source of uncertainty right now.
Let me ask you whether you think people need to get booster shots as we get closer to the fall now, Dr. Labos. What do you think?
I think yes. I think children should get the annual flu vaccine in the way that many of them often do. With regard to the COVID booster, I mean, we don't have a lot of firm data on it. We have to infer things. And, if you're the type of person who says, well, COVID is just a bad flu, well, a bad flu is pretty bad because a regular flu is bad. A bad flu is even worse. And so if you get an annual flu vaccine, you should probably get an annual COVID vaccine as well. The vaccine that's going to be rolling out in the fall is, different from what came before. It is better formulated and better matched to what's circulating out there. It's going to be directed against the XBB variants, which are still the dominant strain. So yeah, there's going to be an advantage to it. It's not perfect, but nothing in life is. It is going to help. So yeah, would I do it? Yeah, I absolutely would.
Let me ask you about hot classrooms. We know this is an issue in Ontario and Quebec. Right now, I know a number of schools, for example, in Gatineau, Quebec, have canceled. It's supposed to be day one. They've canceled it simply too hot as well. There's a lot of conversations about air conditioning or a lack thereof in schools. So some places trying to, open up windows and use fans. They're just not used to this kind of heat that we've seen, and this heat dome is going to stay over chunks of Ontario and Quebec for the next couple of days. Your advice about this issue?
We need to upgrade the infrastructure. I mean, we saw it with COVID, where a lot of classrooms have poor air quality, have poor ventilation, and that needs to be upgraded. And this is the same issue. Like it is no longer acceptable, I think, in this day and age to not have air conditioning in public buildings. There was a time when maybe it was okay, but I don't think it can be going forward. The situation is not going to get better. We're going to have more hot spells like this that are going to last longer into the fall than they ever did before. And unless we want to cancel classes like this, we're going to have to install air conditioning. We're going to have to improve ventilation. We're going to have to generally upgrade the infrastructure of our public buildings, be it schools, workplaces, hospitals, and all of those things. But that's going to require money. It's not going to happen from one day to the next, but it's going to have to happen. Otherwise, we're just going to keep having this cycle of the same problems over and over again. We have to start taking air quality and the indoor status, air status of our buildings seriously, and realizing that we can't just have central heating. There has to be central air conditioning and adequate ventilation to make sure the air quality is good enough to try to limit the spread of infections that are going to happen in classrooms every fall at this point.
Dr. Christopher Labos in Montreal. Thank you, Chris. Always good to see you.